Hello and welcome to Smart Cities Connect and to our panel today, Accelerating Digital Transformation with Municipal Fleets. My name is Connor Riffle. I'm the VP of Smart Cities at Rubicon. We're a technology company in the waste recycling and smart city space, and I'll be your moderator today. We have an excellent and experienced group of panelists today. I'm so excited to launch into this discussion. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to dive deep into an often overlooked element of smart cities, and that is the municipal fleet. Cities in the U.S. own more than 10 million vehicles, covering everything from sanitation to filling potholes to checking water meters. These vehicles are a challenge to manage, especially remotely, as cities across the U.S. have had to do during COVID. And they're also an opportunity. These vehicles are also assets that cities can tap to unlock lots and lots of smart city value. So I'm excited today to have a fantastic panel who's going to walk you through their own experiences in digitizing municipal fleets. They're going to cover all of these questions today and more. Joining me today for this amazing panel, we have Mayor Stephen Goldsmith, Director of the Innovations Program at the Harvard Kennedy School, formerly the Mayor of Indianapolis and the Deputy Mayor of New York City. Welcome, Mayor Goldsmith. We also have Michael Shaw, the Director of Public Works in the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And we're also joined by Jeff Friedman, the leader of Citizen Services at Amazon Web Services, AWS. A couple of quick notes. We're going to be doing a Q&A at the end of this session. So as you listen to our panel today, please take some notes, note down your questions. We're going to have a Q&A at the end so that you can put questions directly to our amazing and esteemed panel. So let's dive in. I want to start with Mayor Goldsmith, and I want to talk a little bit about what the COVID pandemic has meant for smart cities. We've heard a lot about the tech boom that has come out of COVID. COVID has accelerated the transition that a lot of organizations have made to tech, and that has impacted government as well. So, Mayor Goldsmith, to start us off, tell us: is this our moment for GovTech? Is this the moment at which the transition to technology really takes root in municipalities?
Well, I hate to start with totally just saying yes to your first question, but yes, I think is the answer. Many of us, I've been in local government for 25 or 30 years, and each year is the moment of X or the moment of Y, and I've been involved in the smart cities work, at least going back to when I worked for Mayor Bloomberg, if not actually before when I was in Indy. And we see incremental improvements, but this last 12 months has seen, I believe, an enormous surge in digital solutions, right? Because all of the pieces were in place, but a couple things happened in the last year. One, obviously, is we had this catastrophic situation, and cities were leaders, and cities had to react, right? And you couldn't do everything at once. So how do you use the data to target and identify opportunities to make a difference, right? Not just whether you're, I wrote an article that kind of looked at whether government was an on and off light switch or a rheostat that you turned, that were a dimmer switch. And so you use the data to dim whether you're open or whether you're closed or which restaurant or how much. So using data to identify risk, that's one thing. The dramatic improvement in digital services so people could get services online dramatically improved as well. So we have this combination of data and customer service driving a solution, and then the whole world of kind of mapping of solutions occurred as well, because all of us are looking at maps and identifying our local community. Let me just say finally, the other maybe more boring response to your question is that COVID required procurement to catch up, right? So the procurement cycles, I used to joke when I went to New York City, I had a 2-year sabbatical from Harvard to go to New York City. And if I began a creative procurement on day one, that when I arrived there, it would be done on the 24th month when I had to go back to Harvard, right? So there's just the acceleration. So what we've seen is an acceleration of innovation. And the last factor, I'm sorry to talk so long, I won't do this again. The last factor is there's just not enough money. No matter what happens in the bill that's about to pass or has passed the Congress, right? That's not going to be a permanent funding. That's just a one-shot funding, and government has to be more efficient. So more efficient, better attuned to the residents' needs, faster procurement cycles, and increased importance of the use of data for targeting and calibrating service delivery all came together in the last year.
That's fantastic. And I want to put the same question to Mr. Shaw. Mr. Shaw, you've overseen a large fleet as the director of solid waste in Kansas City, and now in your new role as director of public works, you oversee an even larger fleet. What has COVID meant to you in terms of digitizing the way that you manage these fleets, and then also digitizing the way that you might manage them going forward?
Well, definitely. Technology plays a huge role. Mayor hit a nail on the head. You don't have much resources, and so you have to be extremely efficient with the resources that you do have. And so, understanding how to move this equipment the most efficient way possible to deliver the most service that you can utilizing that equipment is just critical in this time. The use of technology allows us to be more intentional about how we use our equipment and our resources. You can't do, obviously COVID has caused a lot of municipalities. Kansas City is no different in making some significant budget decisions that reduce the services or even reduce the levels of services that we provide. And so we have to be very intentional about how we provide those services so we can get the maximum return on that investment and a maximum return on the use of this equipment and services that we provide. So we've been very fortunate that we took a deep dive into technology before the COVID pandemic hit. But with that, with technology associated with our operations, we had, as bad as it was, it would have been worse without it.
Good. And just to double down on that, Mr. Shaw, give us some, examples from the front lines of this last year, when you've got this fleet that's got to go out every day and pick up the garbage no matter what's going on in the world, right? What did that mean for your operations in terms of, did you have drivers calling in sick? Did you have, how did your operation have to flex as a result of all the chaos over the last year?
No. So a lot of the things we did. So one, we had split shifts, right? So because of space requirements and social distancing requirements, all the staff couldn't be in the facility at one time. And so some services started an hour before other services and 2 hours before another so that staff can come in, get their equipment and go out and go do the work. And then of course, as we had standards, COVID standards, and whether sometimes people had to go into quarantine. And when you go into quarantine, that reduced the number of staff available to go out and provide the work. And so the technology allowed us to identify where our gaps were at and get additional resources into those gaps so that there was no delay to our customers. And then, with a lot of stay-at-home orders, Kansas City is no different than the other community out there. With the stay-at-home orders, our citizens produce more trash. At the time when we were, having to change how we do business, the demand for our service went up by over 20%. And so managing those demands and those expectations, because, the consumer out there, they just, they want their trash picked up. Not that they don't care, because that's not the case, but they don't see the correlation necessarily all the time. So being able to be nimble and be agile and be intentional about how we deliver those services was critical for us. And like I said, multiple shifts, delayed starting shifts. We had to rotate staff out due to quarantining type scenarios that we had to address. And then obviously the PPE, how we address the equipment, from sanitizing equipment, making sure that the employees had the proper PPE and all the safety checks and everything else that had to go on. It was quite an undertaking. It's quite a task. And again, the technology, even if it's, routing technology, but even technology from thermometers taking temperatures and engaging employees' health, the health of the equipment, the health of all the mechanics working on the equipment. I mean, it is a massive undertaking.
That's great. And Jeff, I want to bring you in on this too. You've actually seen some of these transitions from your time before AWS, working for the city of Philadelphia, and your perch now, actually, watching as this technology transition happens for government, much of which is enabled by AWS. So, do you agree with Mayor Goldsmith that this is the time for this, these tech-enabled services in government?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. Just to build on what my colleagues have already said, I think one of the things I did work for the Office of Fleet Management in the city of Philadelphia a few years back, and it was really pre cloud enablement, and so some of the things that we dreamed about, quite frankly, I was an analyst in the department, and some of the things we dreamed about, able to get that kind of timely, accurate, relevant information about what your fleet was doing and how fast it was traveling and how many miles and productivity per route. It just wasn't really possible at that time. The cost and complexity of implementing those sorts of telematics were just really challenging. And then so what I think about is just how that cost and complexity burden has been so greatly reduced, and then the robusticity of the information is so much more timely, relevant, and accurate. And then I think about the difficult financial times that we're living in, and I'm a veteran of several large fleet size configuration exercises, and the number and size of vehicles in your fleet is really important. And if you can really fine tune that and calibrate it so you're optimizing cost, especially when we're talking about larger vehicles like compactors, if you can really with some precision figure out how many vehicles you need in the fleet based upon your service needs, you can reduce cost burdens, and fleet managers can contribute to what's probably going to be in many places a citywide effort to really contain costs, do more with less, essentially.
Well, that's a great point, and I want to get into this because I know folks are going to have strong opinions on it. But I've read articles over the last year that talk about how smart cities is dead. Right? Like, government budgets are strapped. They got crushed during COVID. And as a result, all this smart technology investment is paused. But Jeff, what you just laid out is you laid out the path through technology, right? Where, you're using technology to gather the data that you need to actually optimize your fleet and to be able to justify those investments going forward. So, how do, and Jeff, this to you first and then to everybody else, but how in a time of strapped government budgets, how do you justify that investment in technology?
Yeah, I think the smart city notion is very much alive and well. I think that what's happening is where we're thinking about it in more of a componentized way. And so, how do those components sort of aggregate up to this larger aspiration that we have for the smart city? But I think that we're going to have smart fleet solutions, smart building solutions, smart fill in the blank. And I think that when you disaggregate your smart city activity, it's easier to figure out what that ROI can be and justify it. I think it's challenging. Cities are big and complex, and typically, I always think of my city, but all up, it's probably it's upwards of 10 billion. There's 65 departments. There's 28,000 employees, give or take. It's really challenging to come up with a well quantified smart city construct for everything. But, again, once you start disaggregating, I think that it's easier to do that calculation, to come up with that formula and to, demonstrate here's direct benefit, here's indirect benefit for this technology investment. Here's, for fleet, here's what we'll save in size. Here's what we'll save in fuel. Here's what we'll save in, risk management. Here's what we'll save in overhead. And here's what we need to spend in order to get that timely, relevant, accurate information so that we can really fine tune the size and configuration of the fleet as well as the operation.
That's great. Mr. Shaw, same question to you. I mean, you've had to justify these investments and this spend over the last, crazy year. What arguments do you use and which ones have been, most successful in getting, leadership folks to realize the benefit?
I would absolutely suggest that smart cities is not dead. I think smart cities are using smart city solutions, certainly at this time. We're seeing it now. Everyone is in a virtual business meeting, using Microsoft Teams or Zoom meetings or whatever the case may be. So technology is certainly advanced to having a lot of meetings using, virtual technology. But even in operations, technology can help make you significantly efficient in how you address, because at the end of the day, you can prove your return on your investment. You can prove the quality of the service that you're delivering because you have the data to back up what you're saying. If you don't have the data to back it up, it's hard to make those arguments. When we introduce smart technology like into solid waste, into a very robust work management system, routing, optimizations, all the bells and whistles that we did in solid waste, in a matter of a year, we saved over $3 million. It was 3 times our investment in the first year of a 3-year arrangement. So our savings is going to be greater next year and the year before and the year after. So I would almost guess that we'll probably have saved nearly $9 million over 3 years with a $1 million investment. So you can't afford not to make these types of investments. As in my role as Director of Public Works, we're introducing this technology across our entire fleet. We're seeing it in pothole repair maintenance. I saw it. We've seen an uptick immediately getting into Public Works. We introduced some of this technology into our snowplow operation. And we've seen an immediate improvement in the way we delivered our snowplow operation, so much so that citizens are just blown away by how much better our snowplow operations have come. And it was the infusion of technology that helped us get that. We were more intentional about how we delivered the service. We're seeing that in smart streets, introducing technology into pavement applications to increase Wi-Fi and WiMAX to customers as they, as we're becoming more of a multimodal city, to provide, internet access to all and knock down this digital divide, using it into concrete solutions. So all this to say, now is the time to really push the envelope to change our trajectory. Our municipalities are hundreds of years old, and we're going to be here for more, 100 more years, if you will. And so the choices we make today actually improve our tomorrow.
That's great. Mayor Goldsmith, you've sat down with the leaders of many of these cities. When y'all talk about ROI and you talk about the smart city investment, what do you tell them? How do you tell them to make the case and make the argument for improving these services?
Yeah, we're running programs for chief data officers and chiefs of staff. I think I should start telling them in the future they should go work for Michael Shaw. That'd be the best way, the best message that they could get. Right? That was a perfect case. So the frustration is, right, that many of the folks who see the power of the data tools don't have control over a budget. right? So they have to make the case to someone else. And then it looks like you're making the case that you want to spend more money. I think the way that Director Shaw just said this is absolutely perfect, right? Maybe I'll phrase it a little bit differently to say, do we want to continue to do the same things we're doing today in the same relatively inefficient ways and count that as saving money? Or do we want to invest $300,000, $600,000, eventually $1 million now to save $9 million, right? And so, and I think a lot of the OMB budget people are kind of used to being game played, right? And they don't like the initial investments. But Jeff did this work in Philadelphia, and Director Shaw is doing it in Kansas City. So I would say just very directly, we cannot afford to do things the way we've been doing them before. How do you invest money to do things more in a more targeted fashion? And just look at the Kansas City model. I mean, do we want to just randomly look for potholes, or do we want to actually look for potholes? Do we want to kind of randomly schedule where our packers and trash trucks go, or do we want to do ever refining logistics, right? And then the most exciting thing, I think, is this ability to, as demonstrated, Kansas City has always kind of punched above its weight in terms of smart cities for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years anyway. But if you think about it, and Connor, your company is in this as well, let's look at an asset and ask ourselves, how do we make that asset more valuable? So we've got a number of packers and trash trucks, whatever the phrase is in Kansas City, we'll call them packers from New York City or trash trucks from Minneapolis or whatever. They're rolling up and down the roads every day, right? Those are underutilized pieces of infrastructure with a little bit of additional funding can become smart. So look at that trash truck out the window. Is it a trash truck or is it a set of rolling sensors? That's the way you make a return on investment in your cities.
That's perfect. It's a perfect segue to talking about the asset piece of this. So, Mr. Shaw, back to you. I mean, you talked about, the work that y'all are doing in Kansas City. You're out with the mayor recently talking about investments in potholes and how to address those potholes. Steve has just alluded to it. Tell us what you're doing there and, why this is important in trying to do more with less and your technology investment in KCMO.
Yeah, so as we know that our street infrastructures, street sidewalks, curbs, bridges, that's huge. It's a huge infrastructure for cities, and it helps cities to get bonds. And so every street has what's an OCI or a street rating. And those ratings, the higher the ratings, the better money you can get, or the cheaper the money is that you can get to do bonds to continue to improve your infrastructure across your community. And so one of the things that we do, we know our trash trucks, they touch 90% of all the streets in this city. So we've introduced technology onto our trash trucks that have, essentially a front-facing camera that has AI technology that identifies anomalies. In this particular case, we're using for potholes. What we know is that whenever we repair potholes, it improves our OCI score, or at least keeps it from going down. When we improve our OCI scores, that means we actually improve the infrastructure and the quality of our infrastructure, which means we can get more money when we wanted to go out for bonds because we continuously improve it. So we use that piece strategically to say we want to be on top of our potholes. I can tell you every city across the country, it's we wait for somebody to complain about the pothole before we go fill them. This is an opportunity to be ahead of that curve where our trash trucks are driving down the streets, they're identifying it. We had some 87,000 potholes last year in Kansas City. We've already filled this year 45,000 of them. And with our improved technology, we'll get to some of them faster. Which ultimately improves the quality of ride in our community for our citizens, right? And so how do we continue to maintain our infrastructure? Kansas City, we got 6,500 lane miles. I mean, it's massive infrastructure that we have to maintain. And so we have to be very intentional and diligent about where we deploy resources and how we get them there as quick as we can to do the best that we can. And so utilizing technology on the trash trucks is one way that we're able to do that.
That's great. And Mayor Goldsmith, I know, you're out there, you're seeing kind of similar types of movement towards using these vehicles to do other things in the city, right? Really utilizing these vehicles as assets. I don't know if there's any other examples you want to give from some of your other work. And then Jeff, same question to you of kind of other examples you're seeing out there of folks trying to do more with these assets or think creatively about these vehicles and how they can put them to use, especially in a time of constrained budgets. Mm-hmm. Mayor Goldsmith, maybe to you first. Yeah.
Well, Director Shaw, I used to think of my people ask me what I specialized in over 25 years of local government. I'd say picking up trash and helping cars get parked. That's about all I did, right, all the time. And very few things are more important than whether my trash got picked up. And so I would take this from the tactical to the strategic, right? So, and just again to keep paraphrasing Director Shaw, but so the first issue, right, is do you have the right pieces of equipment on the street, and do they have the right route structure, right? So let's just use the data to maximize the efficiency of the route pickup and the recycling, right? So those are two different things. As you know, because of your work, Connor, recycling requires some data to make sure that the right stuff's getting in the right bin and all that. So you've got that. You have the recycling efficiency and the truck efficiency. And by truck, I mean, how the sensors on the truck is the right truck. Then you got the way the route of the truck. But then you've got the ancillary uses of this. These are expensive pieces of equipment rolling up and down the streets of Indianapolis or Kansas City. So then you say to yourselves, okay, how do we use new camera imaging and AI, machine learning, to understand street cleaning, to understand cars that are parked, to understand cars that need to be towed because they're in the wrong place, to understand other sorts of street conditions, to identify graffiti that needs to be picked up, fill in the blank, like what from the cameras. And then the third area, of course, is predictive analytics, like where can we identify conditions that need to be repaired in advance, whether that's a pothole or a crack in the street or some other blight item as well. So I think that the range of opportunity is dramatic. And the last point here, which be interesting to see what Jeff and his role and the director as well have to say about this. But one of the challenges is that the costs are in one agency, like the cameras that would go on the trucks, but the savings may be in another area, right? Like street blight or graffiti, and how you manage this kind of return on investment across the agencies is a particularly challenging thing that many of my communities of practice face.
Yeah.
Jeff, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I guess actually my first thought, Mayor Goldsmith, to that would be, that's what's so interesting about these, the rolling sensor array, but maybe the value add is picked up through some sort of chargeback protocol. You rattled off a bunch of really good use cases. Maybe one, I like the change detection use cases for smart cameras. And so, maybe your public works department has the sensor array and it's picking up change detection that the licenses and inspection educators or compliance officers can follow up on. And so there may be a direct revenue connection between, fees and fines for things that are happening on a facade that can be factored into that overall ROI and maybe charged back to the departments that are capturing some of that revenue because of the ability to have this rolling sensor array. And I guess maybe just maybe zooming it back a little bit, in my role in sort of citizen engagement and citizen services, I think about how do we improve the UI and UX for those kind of digitized and automated services that people need to avail themselves of, and then actually where do we need to deepen human connections? Because sometimes we actually need to increase the time and intensity that human beings, government and citizens spend engaging with each other, and then you get to this smart city activity that we're thinking about, and I think about how we can really elevate the human experience And so taking into account the citizens and the folks in the enterprise who now, we can liberate resources, whether they're individual or governmental, from these sort of lower value activities, and we can automate them. So instead of people having to, we're not going to take away channels, but instead of having enterprise or citizen focused on, getting the app and downloading the app and then reporting these potholes, what if we can capture 90% plus with the smart camera technology, and we liberate those resources for other endeavors, for other pursuits. Citizens no longer have to focus time and attention on it, and then the folks in the enterprise don't need to spend time and attention either. So just some thoughts about how it really enables you to do more with less and get more focus on higher value activity, as opposed to these high volume sort of rote activities like pothole tracking.
Definitely. Fantastic. All right. So, I just want to remind everybody in the audience, submit your questions. We've got time in a few minutes here for Q&A. We've got 2 minutes left. I want to just do a quick round robin to ask everybody, what's next? What's next in this space for you, Mr. Shaw, in Kansas City? Steve and Mayor Goldsmith, for you in your work, what do you see as the kind of the next frontier that we're going to see cities tackling with municipal fleets? And then Jeff, same question to you. So, Mr. Shaw, we'll start with you first. What's next for y'all in this space?
Actually I think we got a good start. I think we need to expand it amongst several of our other vehicles, really bringing technology to snow plowing, changing the way that we provide a basic service such as snowplow. That's sort of next on the horizon for us. We've already started into pothole. So between trash, street maintenance, and snow plowing, utilizing those technologies that provide such a basic service to everyday citizen, trying to ensure that we do it at the most cost-efficient way possible and provide a high-quality service.
That's great. Mayor Goldsmith?
Well, I think you'll see more data used for sustainability purposes. Recycling will be coming back stronger than it's been in the last couple of years. You'll see data that's been used so far on trash trucks. It'll be applied sensor technology to other city vehicles. City fleets are often underutilized themselves. I think we'll see more machine learning as we evaluate both the pictures of what's going on at the street level, and that'll be applied to our lessons. And then finally, I think, again, the Kansas City is a good example. We're going to see more customer service, right? This is an ability for us to use the data that we have to better manage the complaints and questions that come from citizens. So higher quality citizen service driven by perhaps some bot responses and AI. The future will see a lot more of this work.
Excellent. Jeff?
Yeah, I would expand on some of the points we've all made during this session, but I think it's figuring out, smart city technology gives us timely, relevant, accurate data. And so I think of this simply as, it's a data play. And so as you think about who else needs that data, how can we democratize that data? How can we monetize it? Beyond the department that's capturing it, beyond some of the departments that might benefit from it. But how can businesses and enterprise and citizens benefit from the capture and collection of that data? One use case that I'll throw out there that I've thought of on my own block, and it's because of something that Mayor Goldsmith said, but most cars cars in cities don't travel a lot. That's the business justification for rideshare companies, essentially. What if that rolling sensor array is capturing information about what a vehicle inventory is doing on a city street, and it's able to enterprise is able to purchase that information and leverage it to offer transit on demand to those residents. So, just being really creative about, expanding on that question that we talked about in terms of ROI and how do you justify it. Who else wants that data? How can we use it to improve quality of life and service, and also who else is interested in purchasing it so that they can direct goods and services that improve quality of life from the commercial sector in addition to public sector.
Awesome. Well, this was fantastic. Thank you. Big thank you to our panelists. I had a couple of really important takeaways that I just want to summarize. One, we're at an inflection point now for GovTech and for fleets specifically. That was a clear takeaway from today's panel. Mr. Shah, you mentioned this is a 100-year investment. That's what we're talking about here. And Mayor Goldsmith, you alluded to it too. We are going to save more money by investing now because these cities are going to be around for 100 years. So that's the outlook and the mindset. And then finally, these vehicles are assets, and there is so much more to be done. And all of you mentioned, some areas for improvement and some areas for the future, including expanding to additional fleets like, snow plows and recycling. So there's a huge amount of opportunity there going forward. So I want to say thank you to our amazing panel. Thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. Again, this is your chance. Please submit your questions. We're going to be taking questions here shortly. And a big thank you to all of you for watching.
Thanks a lot for having us.
Thank you.